Good morning, everybody. My name is Dewanti Kartika Sari, and today I'm going to talk about the film adaptation of a novel, which both go by the same title, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. So these are some points that we're going to discuss this time. There are four main points: historical backgrounds of the movie, the comparison and contrast between the movie adaptation and the novel, analysis, and the conclusion. The first point we have to discuss is the historical background. The movie, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, is the adaptation of the John Boyne's novel, The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, which is based on the setting of a horrifying period of time during World War II, known as Holocaust. Holocaust is the systemic state-sponsored killing around 6 million of Jewish men, women, and children, and millions of others by Nazi Germany and its collaborators during World War II. It is fueled by the racial supremacy of Aryans as one of the core beliefs of the Nazi. In his book, Mein Kampf, Hitler further developed the idea of the Jews as an evil race struggling for world domination. Later, Hitler's worldview revolved around two concepts: territorial expansion and racial supremacy. On January 20, 1942, Reinhard Heydrich convened the Wannsee Conference in Berlin to organize the final solution to the Jewish question. And in the same year, the Nazis built killing centers at some occupied places in Poland. The death camps were to be the essential instrument of the final solution. The Einsatzgruppen, or special mobile killing units, are assigned to travel to do the murders. And Auschwitz became one of the most notorious and lethal of the concentration camps, which had 3 camps in one: a prison camp, an extermination camp, and a slave labor camp. And the next point we're going to talk about is the contrast and comparison between the novel and the film adaptation. Having read the book previously, I found myself quite surprised after watching the movie adaptation. There are some of the features from the book that are presented differently in the movie from what I've imagined before. First, about the character and their characterization. The main character, Bruno, on the one side, I think the cast of Bruno, who is Asa Butterfield, was doing great. The portrayal of his character is pretty much the same as I expected. He captures the typical German at that time, but also presents his innocence as a kid in general. On the other side, I expected more of his innocent thoughts on his father being presented in the movie. Like, for example, how he sees his father's occupation compared to the occupation of his father's friends. And the next character is small. Even though his acting is pretty good, I expected this particular character either smaller or skinnier than represented in the movie, given the deprived circumstance. And the next character is the father. I expected the portrayal of the father to be more charismatic, more German, and someone who has that kind of cold smiles and deadly stare. And from my perspective, the cast in the movie, who is David Thewlis, is more like a Russian than a German, and I would expect the the character of father presented in the movie to look more like other actors, such as Thomas Kretschmann or Ralph Fiennes, who have been cast as Nazi before, or another actor who never had a role Nazi before, like Chris Vance. And the next is going to be about the scene. Despite many differences regarding how the scenes in the book are presented in the movie, I would only address some of them today. The first scene is the dinner scene. According to the book, there is supposed to be no granddad joining the dinner. It's supposed to be only mother and father who have the conversation with Cutler. And instead of the granddad, it's supposed to be the mother who questioned Cutler regarding his father before eventually Pavel spilled the wine in front of Cutler. And the scene of what Cutler has done to Pavel is described in the book as unexpected and extremely unpleasant. And I think how it's presented in the movie scene is fairly on point, despite the possibility of its variety. And this scene also portrays how the suppressed fear and anger of his circumstance given by the evidence of what he has impulsively done to Pavel. And after the scene where Pavel was beaten to death by Kotler, there's a scene where Gretel put her arm around Bruno in the movie, and she gives quite gentle understanding regarding the incident earlier at the dinner. While in the book, there's no conversation between the two about what has happened earlier. The scene has significance to the character of Gretel, who doesn't show that kind of empathy to his brother as described in the book. And the third scene is in the chapter 18 about crossing the fence. It's Small who initiated the idea of crossing the fence by lifting up the fence a little bit. But in the movie, it's Bruno who found out the idea to cross the fence by digging under the fence. And the next scene is in the chapter 7, where Bruno fell off the swing. Then Pavel carries him to the kitchen and takes care of his wounded knee. And later, when Bruno's mom arrived at home and came into the kitchen, she checked on Bruno and then asking him to go upstairs. As he was going upstairs, mother said thank you to Pavel, but then also asked him to say that she's the one who cleaned Bruno up instead of him in case the commandant asked. However, the scene in the movie here portrays the mother with a kind of sympathizing stare to Pavel, with only expressing her gratitude of what he has done to her son, instead of taking the credit out of it. And the scene also plays a significant shifting of her character, which is different from how she is described in the book. And in the last chapter, it takes several days to discover Bruno's clothes and boots by the fence, and it isn't clear that the family knows what truly happened to Bruno, nor his last his exact class existence. Contrast to what's presented in the movie, which seems to take the same day to reveal all of those things. So after having the contrast and the comparison between the novel and the movie adaptation, we move on to some questions. The first question is, what makes a film adaptation of a novel effective? According to a professor of literature, Dr. Corey Gruel, a quality adaptation stands on its own. The film must honor the book enough to claim the status of adaptation, while the director takes creative liberties to make his mark in the world of film. While directors should maintain some accountability to the overall plot, it is possible for a film to create what Dr. Gruel calls as imaginative dissonance, which makes it difficult for viewers to see the film as even following the original book. And the next question is, was the film adaptation effective? I would say it was pretty effective as the adaptation to the book, considering it's also a story told from the point of view of a child. And according to some of the rating sites, the movie has gotten more good than bad reviews. So I would also take that into my consideration, despite my personal preferred version of some scenes in the movie, which I expected to be presented differently. And also there are some parts of the novel which are not included in the movie, such as in chapter 11, when the Fury and his wife come over to Bruno's house. I expected this part somehow being presented in the movie, even though they're only displayed from the back or half below, focusing on the height of Bruno, because I think it can help to expose or highlight more of the essence of the content. The next question is which version you preferred and why? Personally, there are particular scenes in the movies which is interpreted better or clearer than what I imagined before, such as what Kotler has done to Pavel and how it's done. However, I would say that I prefer the book over the movie because the movie has a lack of essential scenes or features of which the book addressed. But I would also say that it's only a matter of different perception of the book. For example, my adaptation version of the book would include the addressing of typical military household, which comes with a set of rules like presented in the book, such as the father's office as out of bounds at all time and no exception, or strictly no interruption when parents or elderly talking. And the last section, which is conclusion, personally, I would say the movie adaptation has successfully captured the general points of the book. However, the modification of some scenes has led to a shifting of characterization of some characters, such as Mother and Gretel. In the movie, the character's mother is portrayed as having more sympathy toward the Jews than she is in the book, and Gretel is also portrayed as having more maturity as older sibling to her little brother than she is portrayed in the book. Described in the book. And the modification also happened more to female characters than the opposite. Also in the dinner scene, it shows the presence of grandfather has taken over the part of which the mother supposed to have, according to the book. And if I must sum up the content of both novel and the movie with one word, I would go with the word tragic. The reason why I chose this word because there's a paradoxical line in below part of the book cover, of which I read, saying a story of innocence in a world of ignorance. And it pretty much sums up the whole idea of the story. And another similar reason is Bruno's last sentence in the book, which says, "You're my best friend, Small," he said, "my best friend for life." And it shows how much it cost to the ignorance from the family to Bruno and the innocence of both boys who were strangers. And it's just tragic how the boys have to die in that way. And maybe that's all from me today. And maybe that's all for today's presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. And if there's a question or any message, please let me know. And thank you very much once again, and have a wonderful day.